I work as a security guard for a mid-sized corporate building situated in the heart of downtown. The area is notorious for its high crime rates, and it's not unusual for businesses to suffer significant losses due to nighttime break-ins. Normally, I have a partner with me, but for the past month I've been working solo while the company trains a new hire. Honestly, I didn't mind the solitude. Sure, it was more monotonous, and staying alert was a challenge, but at least I didn't have to deal with the occasional grating personality of a co-worker. About 2 weeks into this solo stint, something unusual happened. During my routine patrol of the parking lot, I noticed a pair of men loitering on the far side of the street. They were standing in the shadows, their gaze fixed in my direction. I couldn't tell if they were eyeing the building or watching me, but their presence sent a chill down my spine. By the time I circled back on my next round, they were gone. I made a mental note of it, but brushed it off as nothing more than a strange coincidence. The rest of the night passed without incident, and I clocked out at 6 o'clock a.m., my report as uneventful as ever. The following days were quiet. Too quiet. But then, one night toward the end of the week, I saw them again. They were in the same spot, shrouded in darkness, their eyes seemingly locked onto me. This time, the unease was harder to shake. Instead of continuing my patrol, I lingered on that side of the building, hoping my presence would deter them. I paced back and forth for about 5 minutes until finally they disappeared into the night. I tried to memorize their features, but the distance and the dim lighting made it impossible. After they left, I stayed outside for another 10 to 15 minutes, ensuring they didn't return. Satisfied, I headed back inside, deciding it was a good time to take my lunch break. It was around 1 o'clock a.m., and the break room, located at the far end of a long hallway, was eerily quiet. I sat at the table, scrolling through my phone while eating, when suddenly I heard a noise. A faint, metallic clink, like something being knocked over. I froze, my phone slipping from my hand. The sound was unfamiliar, something I'd never heard in this building before. After a few tense seconds, I got up and walked to the doorway, peering into the hallway. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, listening intently, but the silence was deafening. Convinced it was nothing, I returned to my meal, though my appetite had vanished. After finishing my lunch, I headed to the security office to check the system for any alerts. Everything appeared normal, but a nagging feeling urged me to make another round. It wasn't fear driving me, more like curiosity. The noise had piqued my interest, and I needed to know its source. I started outside, walking the perimeter of the building. The night was still, the only sound the faint hum of the streetlights. Finding nothing out of the ordinary, I went back inside and began patrolling the interior. Normally, I wouldn't inspect every corner unless the system flagged something, but tonight felt different. The hallway was long, shaped like an L, with the main entrance on one end and a small stairwell on the other. The stairwell led to an old emergency exit, a heavy metal door that, due to its age, wasn't connected to the security system. To compensate, the company had installed a massive padlock, bolting it shut to render it useless. But as I reached the end of the hallway and peered through the door's window into the stairwell, my blood ran cold. The padlock lay on the ground, snapped in two, and the door had been forced open. My heart pounded as I rushed back to the security office. If someone had broken in, how had they slipped past me? I should have seen or heard something. I began reviewing the surveillance footage, fast-forwarding to the point where I was outside, watching the two men. After they left, I had stayed outside for a while to keep an eye out. Unbeknownst to me, during that time, they had circled to the back of the building, broken the lock, and entered through the emergency door. The footage revealed something even more chilling. While I was in the break room, one of the intruders had been mere feet away from me, separated only by a door. The noise I heard, that was one of them bumping into a desk as they tried to hide. By the time I went back outside to continue my rounds, they had already fled. The tape showed that both men were armed, either with large knives or possibly small firearms. It was clear they were prepared to eliminate any obstacles, including me. I immediately called the police and handed over the footage, but the investigation went nowhere. The video quality was poor, and the men's faces were obscured. The company reported that several hard drives and files had been stolen, and they seemed deeply concerned about what was taken. To this day, the identities of the intruders and their motives remain a mystery. But here's the unsettling part. Ever since that night, I've noticed small, inexplicable changes in the building. A door left slightly ajar, a faint scent of cologne in the hallway, a shadow moving just out of sight. It's as if they never truly left. And now, every time I make my rounds, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. I work the night shift at a medical center, specifically in the emergency room. My role is primarily at the front desk, where I check patients in. Even though it's not the most glamorous job, the ER is never dull. Every night brings something unexpected, and this particular shift was no exception. The night began quietly, almost too quietly. A few patients came and went, but nothing out of the ordinary. I spent most of the time chatting with my co-worker Clara about random topics to pass the time. Around 2 a.m., Clara headed to the cafeteria for her break, leaving me alone at the front desk. Not even a minute after she left, the automatic doors slid open and a man walked in. He was dressed in a dark grey hoodie and black jeans, his hair disheveled, as if he hadn't slept in days. There was something off about him, an unsettling energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He approached the counter slowly, his movements deliberate, and his eyes darted around the room before landing on me. "I'm looking for Emily Carter," he said, his voice low and raspy. I didn't recognize the name, and as far as I knew, no one by that name had been admitted recently. Still, I checked the system to be sure. Nothing. "I'm sorry, but there's no one here by that name," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. "You might want to check other hospitals in the area." He nodded awkwardly, his eyes lingering on me for a moment too long before he turned and walked out. I exchanged a glance with the security guard stationed across the room. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew that guy was trouble. About half an hour later, Clara returned, and the rest of the shift passed without incident. By 4 a.m., I was exhausted and ready to head home. I said goodbye to my co-workers and made my way to the parking lot, Vaux. The lot was massive, with employees required to park in the back to leave the closer spots for patients. As I walked to my car, a strange feeling washed over me, a mix of unease and paranoia. I couldn't shake the memory of the man from earlier. The parking lot was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of my shoes on the pavement. I quickened my pace, clutching my keys tightly. When I reached my car, I threw my bag onto the passenger seat and started the engine. My house was about 20 minutes away, and the roads were deserted at that hour. But as I drove, the feeling of being watched intensified. My eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, but the road behind me was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the sensation that someone, or something, was following me. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I was on edge. I got out of the car and headed to the front door, fumbling with my keys. I hadn't even stepped inside when I heard it, the sound of footsteps sprinting up my driveway. My heart raced as the person reached the porch and began rattling the door handle, trying to force it open. Thankfully, I always locked the door behind me out of habit. The handle stopped moving, and there was a brief pause before a voice spoke. "Please, ma'am, open the door. I need help, please, just let me in." It was him, the man from the hospital. His voice was desperate, but there was something chilling about the way he spoke. I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with trembling hands. Before I could even speak to the dispatcher, I heard the sound of footsteps retreating. I peered through the peephole and saw him running down the street, disappearing into the darkness. When the police arrived, they searched the area and found something that made my blood run cold. The back door of my car was wide open. The man had been hiding in the back seat the entire time I was driving home. That's how he'd gotten to my door so quickly. The officers explained that he had likely been stalking me for weeks, watching my movements and waiting for an opportunity. He had probably hoped I'd park in the garage, giving him direct access to my house. Parking in the driveway had thrown him off, and it might have saved my life. Using security footage from the hospital, the police identified him and arrested him a few days later. He was a complete stranger, someone I had never met before, but he had developed an obsession with me. He never admitted to any wrongdoing, only repeating that he just wanted to talk. It's been a while since that night, and I haven't heard or seen anything about him since. But the experience left me with a lingering sense of unease. I've since installed security cameras and motion sensors around my house, and I double-check my car every time I get in. That night taught me one thing. Danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. And sometimes it's closer than you think, even in the back seat of your car.